There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this. The Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this. The day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this. Try.
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca, a co-host, teacher in socialism and liberalism, and artist and leftist Alex. We are online at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find that link to our site in the episode notes. You can also find my personal social media handle as @Don Eduardo Barca on Instagram. And please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications. Share your favorite episode where we found this episode. And we also have shirts if you would like to contact Andy for. Thank you. All right, I look forward to this new school year with shout-outs if the students are as as savvy as your previous class last year.
Well, first off, welcome back, Eduardo.
Thank you.
It's very good to see your face again and have you back here.
Yes. I hope you two are well.
Yeah, and Alex, it's good to have you back too. You were doing something last week. And in terms of the shout outs, actually, the student who outed me at Aram, you know him, Alex H. Jacob. Both him and his brother are going to Aspire, Golden State GSP.
The jig is up.
It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time. So I suppose, and Jacob came to me the other day and was like, I see Mr. Alex is on the show now.
Oh, he's watching. That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. So
we have students spying on us.
Rather than the state, you know.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I welcome all my student spies. I welcome them all. Yeah. So, but no, there may be some shout outs coming, but not right now.
All right. Well, let's see. So I'll turn it over to you, Andy, since you were going to, you had this idea.
Yeah. So a few weeks back, maybe almost a month back, after an episode that Alex and Kenny and I had recorded, Alex had mentioned in that episode, like, trying to put something together like that. He talked more in depth about it at the end of the episode because he didn't want to talk about it on camera because it was still in process. And it was like, and he was like, I kind of think I'm trying to put together a meeting, like an organizing meeting. And he invited Kenny and myself to come. I was definitely interested in it. And Kenny, he didn't realize was in Central Valley, so he was like, he wasn't going to be able to make it. I imagine Eduardo would have been invited, you know, who's in SF. And I think I probably could say right now, like, what he was trying to do, but I'm going to let Alex talk about it. But it never quite, it hasn't yet materialized. Like, I think he tried to put together that meeting and it didn't quite materialize. And then I asked him about it and he just expressed some concerns about what he was trying to do. And then I was like, you know what? Let's stop talking about it. Let's talk about this on What's Left, because the theory I think all of us agree on here, me, Alex, Eduardo, Kenny, I think Hema agrees with this, is that ultimately for the kind of world we want, everyone's going to have to become an organizer. Like not 10%, like 97% are going to have to ultimately begin thinking about the kind of questions that I think Alex is starting to think about, or not thinking about in relationship to this moment. Because Alex, I think you've thought about organizing. In fact, you organized the Palestine event at your house, so you do organize. But so I really wanted to use this space to put some questions to you and to think about what your doubts were or what your concerns were, and for people to hear them, because I think everyone is going to go through some version of this kind of thing and is going to have to pass through this process. So that's why we're doing this today. And ultimately, this kind of episode for me is the most important thing I think we do. And as Eduardo, has mentioned, we think of What's Left at times as a workspace for us to kind of like plan. That's how Workers and Students for Choice came to be. And some of the work we've done with other people have been helped by discussions we've had here. So today is about Alex's organizing and the thoughts he's having about it. Maybe Alex, you can say something, but I might want to start with a question for you, but let me see if that makes sense to you. And okay. Well, first, can you tell us what you were thinking you were trying to do on that day? Like before you said, "Hey, could you come into this?" What did you have in mind, and what got you thinking about it? Like what did you feel like were some of the global and local spurs that were making you think, I need to do something? So,
well, as you very correctly identified, I have been thinking about these things for a very long time. In some sense, you could say that I've probably been thinking about the question of organizing people into movements and forces since I was like in elementary school. I've always been wondering about the state of the world and how people can affect it. It's all, even though my political ideology, or the name that I gave to it, evolved over time, I would say I've always been driven by a basic desire to be a part of, and with my community, be a part of the political decision-making process, right? But recently, obviously, events are just, it's a mountain of shit, for lack of a better term. And I'm trying to find the gold within that. And so it feels like a long-term journey, but also a spur of the moment thing where I want to try to use momentum of the zeitgeist, momentum within my own life to transform. I'm basically fed up with the state of my own life and the state of the world, because I know the two are interlinked, right? I do not choose to see my life as a vacuum amongst other vacuums. No man is an island. I truly believe that. And based on that belief, I know that mutual action is strongest if it is executed correctly. Now, that if is a big if, and then obviously all of philosophy is dedicated to trying to understand that if. But knowing that it has to be done is obvious. And I think that my own place, as much as I've thought about these things and I have made certain actions, I have not participated enough to my own standard, I would say. I have a high standard for myself, but I think part of what needs to happen, and maybe this is a contentious thing, but is we all need to have higher standards for ourselves and for each other, right? We cannot have higher standards for each other if we do not have them for ourselves. Like that is definitely something, that's kind of an addition I would make to the idea of the golden rule, right? People say, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, right? I would say if you should have high standards for yourself, because then you can have high standards for others. If you try to have high standards for others and you don't have them for yourself, it's not really going to work out. Things will happen, but it will be a corrupted version of whatever you're trying to do. And so I'm at the intersection of a lot of these things. And I'm attempting to maneuver my way into turning it into something meaningful and something that goes beyond my own ego and beyond my own circumstances. Is motivated by it right now because it's the beginning, but hopefully I want it to pick up steam and for others to become a part of what is happening.
If I asked you this question, if I asked you to think of the top 3 things going on in the world that are actually animating you to do this, like, not because these are what you're addressing, but the actual, like, either hearing about these things or reading, what is happening politically that you think is the biggest trigger for doing this right now?
All right. 3 things. Okay. The incoming global war. All right. The incoming climate crisis. All right. And the ongoing economic and political disenfranchisement of the working class around the world. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. And Eduardo, do you want to ask anything?
I know. I just wanted to know what was the motivating factor. Yeah. What was pushing you? What was driving you?
I mean, look. The thing is about life, it is a pool of possibility. And, any moment is as usable as the next, but they also have their own unique reasonings. As I said, in my own personal psychological journey, I've been, dealing with things and this and that. And for whatever reason recently, if I try to look at the reasons, it's like I left my job at Orem because I was dissatisfied with the system. I could have continued working there or at a similar place if I felt that I had it in me. But I have subjected myself to economic uncertainty because I wish to make a bold move in the direction of organizing. I'm dedicating more of my time to trying to get people together. I'm doing a bunch of other things too, laterally with that, because I'm not trying to become this obsessed political operative either. Because that to me is already screaming of cronyism, screaming of bureaucracy, all these things. I'm trying to have a richer, fuller life. I'm pursuing my artistic pursuits. I'm an artist, a musician. I want to do more of that. I'm trying to restructure my life in a way so that I make just enough to live and so that I can devote myself fully to my passions. And I'm making more of an effort to do that. And it's been a pending matter that because of where I'm at in my life and the lessons that I've learned and the ones that I've yet to learn, now feels like a time where, for whatever reason, I can't exactly tell you the exact reason, but all I can tell you is the fact of I'm doing more now than I have in a very long time. So,
yeah, and what I hear in that, and the reason that was, I'm glad you could know like what those things were, because generally there is something, not because you think you're going to solve it, but there's usually something really animating a person that is just, they've had it basically, they're done, and it's like I can't take it anymore. I have to now start to do something. Often people fool themselves into or thinking that if they get started into action that they're actually going to solve that thing, but that is not really the point. Is that you now feel like you must act, and this is what causes social movements to occur. Is something happens where a bunch of people just are done, like with sitting tight on stuff, and feel like they have, for their own personal reasons, have to do something. And so that's what I hear in what you're saying. So what, you go ahead now and say, what were you thinking of doing? Like, what were you the thing you invited me to? And
so what I'm primarily inspired by here is the idea of councils, council communism, or a lot of the kind of like, syndical, confederal kind of ideas that have existed. The way I see it, there are obviously, everyone in every corner is going to be doing their thing. And I think in a lot of corners, people are going to find movements and organizations that they can resonate with. But the fact of the matter is, within my own locality here in the Bay, while there are movements that technically I'm related to, I don't feel enough in my own personal life or in my social life that there is really a meaningful political, social, economic activity base to participate in. And I want to be a part of creating that, right? And it needs to start somewhere. I understand that it's going to be small at first, but the idea is trying to get people that, one, live within a certain proximity to each other, probably like 20, 30 mile radius, something like that, maybe a little smaller even, considering where we're at. Two, are done with the way things have gone, right? And 3, currently uninvested in a particular cause, right? And wishing to maybe either broaden their scope or localize their scope, right? And so again, this is still pending. I have not given up on this idea, but I also understand it's going to take time. And like I said, I'm also making lateral moves and kind of putting the idea out there and letting life sort of take care of it too. So a big theme for me here, something that I'm really inspired by recently. I was reading this letter from this Mexican anarchist, Ricardo Flores Magon, and he was talking about how he's very happy. The person he's writing to told him about how her mother was out, and it's on some camping trip, and they went through the countryside, because he said it reminded him of his own mother and his own time in the countryside, and how much he understood the farmer, and how he said he was a farmer of the mental fields. He was one who sows ideas, and unlike the authoritarian who tries to force the ideas into people's heads, right? He tills the mental soil and sees if it gives good fruit, and that's what I'm trying to do, and I understand that it's a multifaceted life. It is not a life of dangerous obsession. It is a life of like careful but committed effort, right? Because those 2 things are necessary, right? Careful because you don't want to overstep and misuse your resources, but committed because you want to be all in and totally invested in the outcome of the situation.
I agree with that. And I'm going to make some commentary here to not speak from like what I think is truth, but just to tell you how I see it. And Eduardo, obviously, if you see it differently, then, you say something different, or, and obviously you can too, Alex. But I do think it's very important that currently you're saying, look, I'm orienting my life to this, but I'm not organizing my life around this point. Like I'm doing it horizontally. The reason I say that is because there's no social movement. If there was a social movement, if things were popping in the way that I remember, Eduardo was looking, he and I were talking about things that were going down in India at around the time of COVID, then the opposite, actually. You dive in and your whole life becomes that. Not because you made a choice, but that's just what's happening. And so if you told me that you were diving in full bore, I would have said, oh, slow your horses down, because I look around the United States and I see nothing happening. And it's very sensible to approach this as, no, I'm trying to change how my life in relationship to these global events and local events, they're going to, they do and will continue to affect us locally. But they're bigger than what we can just do by our own actions, or even our actions in San Francisco, ultimately even actions in the United States that relies on the global working class, ultimately, But I think that the fact that you're taking you're kind of, your weather vane is shifting in a different direction, but you're prepared to understand that you're going to navigate winds here. That's very smart. And I think it's related, but I'm going to say it's related to the state of is also related to the state of the social movements in our country. You might know that, but I want to say that to people, because if things were really popping, we would all be diving in, like, and we wouldn't even be thinking about it. It's not a moral thing. It's just like, you would feel like this is our shot, and that's how it goes. But that's not happening right now. So I just want to say that.
Eduardo, I'm curious to hear from you. I know, I know you're taking it in, but I'm over here what does Eduardo have to say?
I suppose I was waiting to see how you would like to form. What would it look like on the ground, materially, like concretely?
So within the first, sorry,
because we here on What's Left, we've all had experience in organizing efforts, and whether it be me back in 2003 and the anti-war movement joining or Occupy, or me or Andy with Socialist group, or Kenny with workers in SF, or Hema, Jessica in Oregon, and I don't actually know your background and how you plan to bring your experience, and what is your vehicle, or how would you
So, I mean, what I'm going to
Appreciate
do,
you.
oh, sorry. Yeah. What I'm going to do is what I think anyone else should do. Okay. Which is I'm going to reach out to the social field and familial field that I already exist within. Right. I'm not trying to enter the political arena and broadcast to a wide public. Right. I, because first and foremost, mass media is part of the problem as in the way that it currently exists, not that it's theoretically evil in every sense, but mass media is currently incorrect. So I'm not going to tap into mass media even as much as I'm on a podcast right now. In all honesty, like the effort does not exist here only so far as to let people know that they should be thinking about it in their own areas. But I'm not even asking people to, hey, send an email my way. No, screw that. We're not at that stage. Okay. Everyone needs to be forming their own little groups, right? So I'm reaching out to my homies, my foos, my people, right? So I'm a part of a community of artists, street artists, vandalists, people that are on the edge of society, people that are also some of them up and coming professionals, educated people, people that are, you know, sort of coming at things with a wide experience, people that are starting to make some money and even own some, you know, land, but they're all united in this artistic vision and a political vision of radicalism without necessarily a specific name to it. But also people who have a wide variety of like mental health issues, economic problems, right? And I feel that generally we're undermobilized, but there is this underlying sense of wanting to break out. And I hear it in a lot of my friends. I hear it in a lot of the people around me who say, I'm tired of doing the same old shit. I'm tired of like to having these same old conversations in this way, but it not leading into a bigger thing. Right. So it's just a matter of making that bigger thing, whatever I'm going to keep throwing shit at the wall until something sticks which is why I'm also willing to hold things off. Like I know that this is a lifelong process and if I die in the process and it doesn't get done, oh well. But for it to get done at all, I need to be committing myself to it, right? So again, within the first couple of months, it would be a matter of literally, first of all, getting people used to the idea of what it means to come together and begin to organize. I would prefer to physically, literally be around a fire because I think fires are important to humanity. I think physical presence is going to be really important, especially to the beginning of this movement, in order to give it a concrete touchstone to always keep throughout the entire process. As much as I understand, again, long distance communication, it's a wonderful technology. It's a good thing. It is part of the corruption. And we need to learn how to work together in a physical level, right? So what we're doing here right now is something, but it does not become what we need it to be until we bring it into that mutual level. Because the world we're trying to create is a mutual world, right? The world that we're trying to avoid is this atomized world of digital interaction that has been constructed, right? So to undo it, that is the first thing that's also immediately available. People getting together and sharing food and conversation for an hour or two once a week, you know, that's doable. So in the beginning, it'll be people just meeting together, getting used to having a simple meeting, right? Like I said, sharing food, sharing drink, being in the physical presence, but with the deeper conversation, right? Because obviously I'm not acting as if people don't already get together and sit around fires to talk. But what it's lacking is the pointed conversation of, as Lenin put it, what is to be done? Okay. And that is the conversation that I'm bringing around to people. And I've been getting feedback. And it really, the difficult part right now is just getting people to find a date. But I already have enough interested people that I'm not really feeling desperate about getting people together and having a particular date. So on the level of when is that meeting coming? I mean, within the next couple of weeks, you know, I mean, I'm not really too pressed on it.
And what would be the reason for not, say, doing it next like this Monday?
I think I'm going to do it this Monday.
Okay.
Because that's like I was looking at this Monday, but I'm also basically just trying to curb my expectations, you know. So I'm playing a very like even keel thing. But yeah, you're correct. We're probably going to do it this coming Monday.
And that's the part that I wanted to talk about because I think this is where, because first of all, I agree you are dropping your poll in exactly the right pool, you know, like for you at least. And I do mine a little slightly different, but but it's similar, but because it's local. And I think I've already, in some ways, organized my friends. What's Left has created a way of doing that. People pay attention to this thing, and the conversations have helped people who otherwise would have not seen the way COVID was coming, and not seen the digital part of it, the economic part of it, the kinds of things that me and Eduardo and Kenny have been talking about because of the people we came into contact with. I think Hema and Brian and Brandy and just moved along with us by virtue, and we moved along with them, because I think, Eduardo, you would agree that if we weren't doing What's Left around COVID, I think we would have all been impacted by it differently. Like me, you, and Kenny wouldn't have necessarily come and to the understanding that we have come to if we weren't doing What's Left. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. It has brought us to an understanding, even though we have some differences. I'm not socialist, no. That's one. Many other areas we don't agree on.
Well, but yeah, I think we would have. I think that whole narrative we would have digested it all very differently as individuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so for myself right now, I see some opportunities with my neighbors, because there's some things happening in my neighborhood, and me and Brandy are now kind of positioning ourselves to be more active, even though we're renting around us. So that's just very locally. And last year I did some stuff at work, in relationship to a colleague who was getting messed with, and the executive director who was a jackass. But I listen to you, and I think you're right where you would want to be. But for me, I would say there's no reason, because it's long term, there's no reason to wait, because whoever would show up to that meeting is going to be the starting point for whatever journey you're on, and whatever journey you're trying to say that they have to be on, right? You're not telling them where to go, but you are telling them, I think it's not just me who has to start going, and that's I think that's your challenge to the people in that room. Do you think you need to get going? And if you don't, that's fine, but let's stay in conversation, because ultimately I'm looking to wind up all these different robots and to see which different way they go, and that's at least that's what comes to my mind. And I want to make another point here, which is one of the reasons I also wanted to talk about this, because when that meeting that you were proposing to happen didn't happen, it was very important to me to talk about that hesitation, because, and most of the hesitation I run in with people is, who am I to do this? Like, I'm not qualified. And that was not what you were saying. So you didn't say, who am I to? So I wanted to talk about that hesitation, because generally, I think the real statement that I would have for anyone is, there is no reason to hesitate ever. Like, the best thing to do is just get started. And then in the starting, you learn, oh, I thought I had 15 friends who was going to do this, and there were 2, and then you start with those 2 friends and have a conversation with 3 people around a fire, if you will, and you just see where that goes. And if all 15 had showed up, that's a very different conversation, but that's hesitation, I think, is the most meaningful thing to talk about right now, because I feel like it's what everyone suffers from. It's part of part of it is the elections, and people thinking that what Kamala Harris is doing is important, or Trump is doing is important. Yes, that's in the background there too. But this thing of hesitation is a huge thing for us to overcome. And I have come to the belief that there is never a reason to hesitate. You can say, that Monday might be a better Monday than this Monday, but I don't know if that point makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense, but in terms of the reasoning for why, I'm I'm still stricken by that. I'm still breaking through it. No, but like I told you, I mean, I'm already
stricken by what? Not because you weren't
by hesitation, by the social malaise of hesitation. As much as I've gotten over it to a certain degree, it still affects my decision making. I mean, it exists as a psychological anxiety expression as well. So like, there's a whole complex around it, but I'm working through it, as it were. So I also just care a lot about this idea, so I don't want it to go to waste. That is but I know that's also been a obstacle for my creative output in my music too. So I think you're more right. I would tend to agree with you, and I think I just need to actually act from that point more often than not.
And possibly with an outcome independent view, the things you're taking on are way bigger than any of us. Those are the animating you. And so all you're doing is you're taking responsibility for your part of the planet, and saying, I'm going to put this into play. And this is one thing that I have to say, though, it took me decades to start to learn is, I might want to organize the working class, but I'm not responsible for what the working class does. Like, I'm only responsible for what I do. It's like, I can't define how they're going to take things. And that was a very meaningful thing for me to come to an understanding of. And I think a very important thing to understand it. I do believe revolution is an act of the working class itself. I am going to be one member within that, but I am not the working class. It's a composite. It's a structure. I'm just an atom within it, and when I say that just is my role, and that we are all of that. And so for me to think that what I got myself I got in my way a lot. I raised the level of anxiety about things. I would hesitate more. I was just more nervous about stuff because I had a misunderstanding of my role within the class. Like, all I can do is just do me, essentially. And if other people are doing that and they happen to align in that same kind of way, when you see that picture of the fish, when we talk about organizing, when it eats the shark, then you got something. But I'm not responsible for what I'm just one fish, and that's a really important thing to begin to take in, and I felt it released me so much. It's like, I can organize something. No one shows up, and it's like, oh, there it is. No one showed up, and then it doesn't say I'm right or wrong. It just meant, well, this is what I was trying to do. But ultimately, good for me, because that's what I think everyone should be trying to do, is like, everyone should be putting together parties, if you will.
I remember there was a time when, I forget what year, there were organizing efforts against the GMOs, which it felt like very similar to what COVID, it's like, we don't want things in our bodies. We want to have our bodies respected. And I don't feel like it took on a national, well, there was a lot of movements around the world, but I don't think there wasn't a movement the way I saw many people who were labeled anti-vaxxers, or the people who were around trying to question whose authority of information we were receiving, or the censorship, or all these other areas that were into play when it came to COVID. Whether people agreed whether COVID existed or not, I don't want to enter that, because I know some listeners question that. And that's not it. I'm more interested in how there were a lot of other areas that COVID was able to spring up. Even now we're seeing with the protests against Israel into Palestine is calling into question censorship, things that I wish were more considered during that time of 2020 and 2021. Now, when I forget what year, I think it was 2011, 2010, sometime, I wanted to do something about more than just putting a label onto foods that had GMOs. I wanted us to completely stop the genetic modification of organisms in general. I just didn't want people to mess with Mother Nature, so to speak. I wanted things to be more than just labels. And so I had organized this, online and offline people that I wanted to go up to Gilroy right here and to the big company Syngenta and just let them know that I had that I was watching them and that I had people out there with me. And we were a lot different people from different backgrounds. And some of them today are Trump supporters. Others are Veterans for Peace. Some of them were health, holistic people. And we organized together. It was a mixed bag of people. I didn't know it was going to be that way. And it was like maybe 10 of us. And here, little me with my bullhorn, and I went out there. And I organized people from Oakland called Place. There's I forget the acronym stand for something. I'll look it up. But I went out there, and I didn't expect a lot of people. I didn't even expect 3 people. It was just, I thought, okay, I'll take my brother, my dad, me, and we'll just be out there. We'll do something. We'll make some noise and have conversations. And we did. And people showed up. Now, I wish more people had showed up. I did feel hesitant. I also had lots of insecurities. I didn't feel like I was a leader of anything. I didn't like to be a leader of anything. I liked to be more just a school of fish. You know, we moved together rather than someone leading. And it was great. Like we had we had this protest out there. We organized people who were going to come. And then we had and then we had a conversation right afterwards about meeting up again. And I remember I led meditation afterwards. And the people from Syngenta, the workers, the employees came down to eat out and watch us. Whether they listened or they mocked us, it was hard. I didn't know what to expect. And there were officers, and I spoke to the officers, and I let them know that this was also affecting them. And I said to everyone that, you know, whether you're conservative or left, or where you work for Syngenta, or you work for Gilroy, the police officing dispatch, or if you are a veteran, like some of the veterans that were there, or whatever, if you were a Republican, such as people were there, it was important for all of us to be united on this front, because we were affecting our children, our generations, our foods, and what was to come, and how we were going to mess with biology and nature. And I just wanted to bring attention to that. And, you know, even the police officers happened to listen to me. They didn't allow us because they knew I was coming. They put cones along the area, and they told us where we could make noise. And but I was able to speak to them, and it made me feel like I was a part of something with other people once I got the ball rolling. You know, eventually the plan was to re-meet and get us together again. I think distance, we all kind of had the central place where we were to meet in Gilroy. And, you know, someone from Gilroy Dispatch came along, and they recorded, or they reported on us, and it's on there. But the point is, it's, if I had hesitated, or if I had felt my insecurities, I'm not saying these are yours, but I'm just saying, take over me, I don't think I would have been so keen on meeting the people that today happen to be friends today, you know, happen to be on other sides of the issue today. And later on, we reconnected with COVID, you know, and that's how I think I have met other working folk that have given me the strength to keep going. And hopefully, if something rises up again, we re-meet, you know, we can do this again. But that's my short share in how I also may have felt, maybe what you have felt. I don't know if it's the same, but you know, that's I think how I can contribute, or how I feel this may also support you or help you in some way, shape, or another. And if it's not, well, there's my story. You know.
No, I mean, I definitely appreciate it. I mean, I am not trying to hold myself back, but I know that that's something that I've done a lot of in my past. So it's important for me to hear how you have been able to get through it, and be realistic while also still being driven by a vision, by a dream, because that's something else that to me is something that I want to be able to communicate to everyone. Because just like how, Andrew was saying, I do want to present this question of what are we doing? Like I'm gonna do this. Are you gonna also join me in doing this in your own way? How are we going to figure this out? And people are a lot less likely to listen to you if you're not already showing some level of effort to overcome your own fear, overcome your own hesitation. I think if you show that it's possible to do it in some way, it becomes more possible over time to build momentum.
And maybe I might want to question that.
Sure.
This is a critique I have of the left. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but so I hear that one part that you said in the end, I hear and I go, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. Let me tell you the part of the left that I don't like.
Sure.
The left in organizing people will often talk about leadership and see themselves as a leadership, left organizers. And one of the things that they often do is when bad news comes, they shave it. They shave that bad news off. When your movement looks smashed, they say, no, it's not smashed. It's like da 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 da. Instead of saying, oh yeah, we're smashed now. We lost, like wholly lost. We're completely defeated. And they often do that because they think that there has to be a shred of hope, a shred of good. That hope is about telling people some kind of positive thing or good news or possibility. And that's because I think they think of themselves as leading people. And that's wrong.
What in what I said made you think that? I guess I'm a little confused by how you drew.
No. I'm not saying you're doing, but it's in that same vein, which is
But because what exactly? Like, sorry,
because the idea that you have to offer that you need to have something to offer people, that you have to bring something that would make you capable of being seen in a particular light.
Well, I guess what I'm talking about is not necessarily having something to offer to people other than an example. I mean, like I guess because that's the thing is, at the end of the day, you have to communicate something. Because for me, the concern is more people that they talk a big game, and when you look at their life, they have nothing to show for it. Like that to me is the problem that I'm looking at. Like, I definitely hear what you're talking about in terms of like people trying to be like leaders who are giving people a vision and things like that. But I guess I'm saying like it's important if you're, because here's my thing. I have to recognize that within the sum total of people, I am amongst a small percentage as of right now. Ideally, it will become a larger percentage.
Yeah.
But regardless of what it might be in the future, as of right now, I'm going to be the person people are looking at regardless, because I have deigned to say these things. I have to be aware on some level of the fact that I need to have something to show for it in my own personal life, in the way that I carry myself, in the way that I am. That's what I truly believe. I think that's the same for everyone. This is a standard that I apply to everyone to be, a good, honest revolutionary.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we can get there by not refining ourselves. I guess because what I'm hearing and what you're talking about is like a manipulation of the message, or
No, I mean that, and you probably, I'm taking a little piece of something that I'm hearing and expanding into what I think people who do this fucking in a sense for a living have become. A friend of mine, Brian, I would often say, let's do this study group. And he would say, hey, to be ready for the study group, I got to do this reading, and this reading. I'm saying, Brian, you've done so much reading. You could unread stuff and still need to come to this and still be good at the study group. Brian might be hearing this and he might still be mad at me for saying that, but I've never agreed with him. And the only thing you are offering your friends and your people you're co-organizing is a place to meet, a time to meet. And what you did was you did one thing. You took the initiative to do it. That is it. If they think they're looking for something else, fine, go ahead and look for something else, because ultimately your message is, I'm taking a step and you're going to have to take a step as well. And what step are you going to take? Which direction it's going to go? Whatever. We can talk about that. We could debate about that. We might, but just all I'm saying here, for those of you who came to the room that I offered it on this day and time, and I did it not because you could have offered it just to, hey, let's get together and have drinks and da. But I don't think you were going to do that, and that was the right way to do it. Because some people would say, "Oh, just tell them it's food. Just tell them blah 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 and bring them there." No, you're being explicit. You're saying this is a change the world kind of thing. Like I want to talk about changing the world in my room. Obviously, you want to do a fire, but I'm just saying. And the only thing you are offering is a room and transparency around what we're trying to do, and you are the initiator of it. And you're saying, "I'm willing to take this step. I'm willing to put myself out there to take on this huge thing and invite us to be part of that." That's it. And if somebody needs more from you, sorry, fucker, go, bye, build it, find it in yourself. You are not going to find it in Alex. You're not going to find it in me because I have to find it in me. That's my responsibility. And their responsibility ultimately is to find it in themselves. It's a collective act ultimately, but we're not even at social movement time. So fuck off. Don't worry about that. Right now, we're just talking about ones and twos. I don't mean fuck off to you. I mean to anybody who thinks that you have to do something or I have to do something. They're looking for something. And these are these left leaders who encourage this by patronizing these people, by telling them the movement isn't something it actually is. By, in my opinion, often lying to them so they don't discourage them, so they don't run away. And it's like, dude, you're building nothing, because ultimately we have to show people that what they're signing up for is either victory or death. That's what we're signing up for. That's the history of this struggle. Victory or death, with torture in somewhere in between. And we don't have to, that's not a question of telling that on the day one or hiding that on day one. But no one's going to find within themselves the desire to do that unless they find that in themselves. And I'm thinking, and I think you're thinking, we're thinking everyone can find it. We're just saying, let's see if we're panning for gold right now. And the banks are not much water and the gold has already been well overmined or whatever, but we're doing that panning now. And we're giving ourselves the opportunity of our own personal, of an experience in doing so and seeing how it shapes us. And that's all we're doing.
I definitely hear you. I guess a lot of my own thinking is influenced by kind of this sort of, I am trying to instill more discipline in my own life. So again, there's a whole other conversation to be had about whether or not the idea of standards is a good one or whatever. I am currently choosing to say that it is. And like I said, I'm trying to hold myself to some sort of standard. And I just feel like I can observe that will probably be better for the movement than not, and so that's kind of the other thing, because I'm afraid of, why I agree with a lot of what you said, despite having my reservations maybe about the wording or whatever, is I don't want to be the kind of leader that the left is full of, where, they're kind of that crusader, the inquisitor, like this kind of like, oh, are you doing this little thing? Like, always trying to micromanage all these things and trying to have, oh, you need to be this, if you're like, unless you're doing all of these things all at the same time and saying all of the exact right things, you can't come anywhere near, the conversation. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to engage in. But the other reason maybe I use the language that I do is because I'm just trying to stay motivated enough. Like, I feel like if I can be an example to myself, hopefully I'm an example to others, but I need to be some kind of an example, because like it gets like depressing, like if I start trying to be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna like, go out there and no matter what kind of state I'm in or what kind of message I have to say, like, I don't want to be the ranting, raving soapbox person. And it takes a certain amount of work. So, and something else I wanted to say, the type of person who can get people to come together to a mutual place, offer the space, give again, for lack of a better term, give a good enough of a vibe, create a good enough of an energy within a room to facilitate the type of conversation that I want to have, and I think people should be having. It takes a lot of work. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. I don't think it's the type of thing that just emerges necessarily. It has a low chance of emerging without this work, because the other thing is, like, I don't want to be a group of people in some basement. Everyone is like watching over their shoulder. There's a bunch of lines on a board. There's we're not at that stage. I don't think that's what's necessary right now. And I'm not trying to spook myself or other people into like going into some rogue direct, because here's my other thing. Within the American example, we have groups like the Weather Underground, right? We had the Symbionese Liberation Army, right? Or even the People's Temple, right? The Jim Jones stuff. That's, tangentially related to leftist ideas. He was sort of influenced by communism or whatever. I don't want to become that. And again, I think that's a certain process that you have to go, like, as someone who is trying to organize, I need to recognize the historical examples of those efforts becoming cult-like or overly manipulative or totally losing the plot or like losing foot. So in terms of like, and maybe this is where I want to introduce the idea of it not being necessarily hesitation, but it being, again, trying to acknowledge when the time is right and to what areas I need to affect, because I am not trying to rush my way into the wrong type of situation. And something that I learned, maybe this is going to sound corny, but something that I learned during my time studying martial arts was that slow, careful movement is the best thing you can get. You want to train for the fast reactions, but if you can buy yourself time, you always want to spend it, because it is better to consider your strike than to have to give a strike without any consideration. That's my mentality on that. And maybe that's part of, not that I think we have totally diametrically opposed points of view, but I think that's maybe some of the attitude difference or the expression, sort of the aesthetic expression of what we're doing.
Yeah. And I would say that I agree with that analogy. And I think the operative important part of martial arts is motion. And there's nothing happens until something starts to move. And if you don't ever start to move, then nothing has happened. And secondly, if there's a chi that you're tapping into, you're not going to have people tapping into you. They're tapping into their top three: the global coming war, the environmental destruction, and the economic down. Now, that may not be their top three, but the thing that will be causing people to move is some degree to which the people who agreed to come are feeling like there is something happening that I've got to do something about. They may have a different top three than you, but if that is going to be the energy of that motion, it doesn't come from us. It comes from that. Because it wasn't you. You didn't see me or Eduardo, or there's no one. You were not inspired by someone. I mean, you kind of were in terms of people you've heard in history, but the reason you are starting to take actions are the things you said in the very beginning of this discussion. And that's who you're going to find. That's who you're finding. You're finding people. They just might have a different set.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to consider that for a while.
How do you foresee this group moving?
So here's the way that I foresee it moving. All right. And again, this is just me dreaming. I don't expect for this to happen, but just in terms of, I need to have something to aim at. Initially, small groups, big conversations, beginning to talk about pooling together resources, sending out messages, propaganda campaigns, things like this, community action, mutual aid, skill sharing. Because part of what I'm trying to do is invoke the creation of dual power. I think it's been a pivotal requirement of any successful revolution, that dual power organizations, things that parallel and replace existing state and private measures, be created and encouraged. And so I see this group, so first, within the first year or so, I reach out to that very small group of people, but we're all connected to, friends, family, coworkers that are, once they see more of a movement, as you say, Andrew, when it starts becoming a social movement, it can be something that they can actually just join because it won't be necessarily a question of consideration. Because even a small group of 5 or 6 people, let's say you create a mutual fund, you say every month we're going to put in $20 to this mutual fund. During our monthly meetings, we're going to decide what we want to apply that towards, if we want to apply it towards something. And that already is much more power and real power than most people get to exercise in their private individual lives. Right. So, and that will already be something to hold on to if this process that I'm talking about within a year happens. So because, I talk to my friends. I try not to talk their ear off either about this, but people are interested, but they're also kind of waiting. There are a lot of people that are kind of like, oh, sure. Because there's a lot of people that are very disillusioned. They care about this on some kind of a level, but it isn't necessarily that they've hesitated. It's that they've gone and gone and gone, and nothing was really there to turn it into a bigger movement, to keep it going, to turn it into the bigger overall, idea that people have had. Which is why, as much as I'm trying to be aware of how basic and simple it is right now, I'm also trying to have the most deep conversation of like, what is the ultimate world that we want? And like, to return, I'm happy that you made me bring it down to 3 things, Andrew, because like, this is now like, I am going to push this. When it comes to stopping the global war, right? Just having that conversation, there's going to be such an unraveling of the entire structure of the world, right? Dealing with the climate crisis in an equitable way, even just having that conversation is going to unravel the way, like, and then stopping the disenfranchisement of working people, just those 3 things together to say there is a problem here and it must be solved. Additions must be asked based on these 3 initial premises. That is the enchilada to me. That is the whole thingy. That's enough of that motivate, because I want, to me, part of the problem is there's all these single issue advocacies that kind of end up not really being orchestrated together, and a true revolution is an act of an orchestra, right? It is an act of a jam band, perhaps, but it is an act of a collective movement that is considerate of all the other parts. That is, I want to ask, let's look at the word organizing. What does it say there? Organizing, right? The organs are of a body, right? As much as this body does not have to have one mind necessarily, it certainly needs to have a harmony of movement. That's what I would say. And I would really invoke the idea of thinking about this musically or in a vibrational kind of harmonic level, because when you can coordinate the frequencies of the different parts in the proper way, that is when you get an actual piece of music, right? And in this case, that's how you get a revolution, right? When you manage to build these forces together, you do the process of revision, of the orchestration, you keep trying it, you workshop it, you go back, you recruit people, and eventually there is a moment where you have that chance to become something. And so I kind of want to move on, because I was most recently involved with a lot of the movements for Palestine, not so much critically on the organizing level, marching, becoming involved in street actions, donating, going to events, things like this. But it did feel like this isn't really the movement, right? This isn't the revolution. This isn't, and to me, it's like, what would that look like at such an embryonic stage, right? Because I do agree with you, Andrew, to return to an even earlier statement of yours. We're not really in a situation where there's a thing to join that's that's definitely going to be your shop. No, we need to create that. As much as some people are maybe having the right conversations, there isn't quite yet that thing that's bringing them together enough for it to be meaningful. And I'm just committing myself wholly to discovering what that might mean for me and for the people around me.
And what interests me about this, first of all, when you first even proposed the idea of hey, I want to get together and meet in person. Just you saying that sparked my interest. And so I was like, can you do this Monday? Because I can make it Monday. And the second thing you said here that I think is really interesting that I definitely had never thought of is the idea that there would need to be a meeting that's taking place around a fire. And what comes to my mind, Alex, is like you could make this initial meeting just to see who comes. And I think you could very easily put that idea out there about, hey, let's do something around a fire somewhere and see who we all could invite and see what kind of discussion we'd have around the fire. Like that 1-2 thing to me it just starts it starts a process that I would have never made that proposal about doing something around a fire. But the minute you said that, I was like, that's interesting. And I do think that produces a different environment that might promote people thinking differently about themselves. So
it's a very fundamental human process. I mean, it's actually, to me, it's a very pivotal part of the way that I've imagined things going, because it achieves a lot. It's a reminder of our heritage, of our past, but it's also in a way new, because like people have kind of lost the habit of like meeting around fires regularly. The people that I hang out with actually do it more than maybe your average person in society. But like, first of all, most people don't have access to fire. And I understand that there are like air quality issues with it. Mind you, having a collective fire is better than lots of people having different fires, but you know, there is that. But you know, the fire is fire, first of all, is pivotal to the entire story of what is a human, what is humanity. Fire is a big part of that question. And I think it's a coming to the base. And I mean, fires are circular. It encourages this reciprocal, rotating conversation, because as soon as, you know, sometimes I've had lots of fireside conversations. I'm a person with a loud voice. I'm a person, you know, I'm very well spoken. I'm well read. So there's the danger, let me call it that, of me taking over the conversation. But a fire is a lot better than most rooms or most tables, because at a fire, it's so immediately easy for one side of the fire. Hey, wait a minute. You know, people, oh, wait, you know, someone over here on the side. Hey, but bro, like, you know, something about the fire just gives people that ability to speak out, feel heard, and also just to sit back if they need to, because the fire is there, right? It's a warmth. If nothing else, even if you're like mad at everybody and you don't want to hear what anybody else has to say, you can choose to focus on the crackling of the fire, and I'm not going to be mad at you at all, as long as you decided to stay by the fire. So to me, it's actually like a very important, and metaphorically, like it's something that I want to carry, even if not every meeting is going to happen around a fire. Yeah. That idea of the spark. I mean, again, that's what Lenin called, you know, I don't just so that everyone knows, I'm not like 100% a Leninist. I think that was a real revolution to look at. I am inspired by what happened there. And the newspaper was called Iskra, Spark. And I do think that's what we need to be. And there are physical ways of reinforcing that metaphorical idea that I think we need to tap into.
If I was near, I'd like to attend. It sounds like you're doing this in what city? Oakland, right?
Oakland, yes, Oakland. We're doing it in Oakland, West Oakland.
Would you be able to report back on what you've been doing?
Absolutely.
So all I can say is I would love sooner than later to just get started with you.
So, you know, for sure, as my own next step, I'm going to be organizing the people in my life, reaching out to the people that I care about, that know me, care about me. Eventually, maybe there's going to be a wider discussion to be had. But for now, what I'm going to encourage people is to reach out to the people in their own lives. I think it is acceptable to use social media to invite people to get off of social media. And obviously, the people that actually know you physically already are going to be more likely to hear that message. So I encourage everybody that's watching or listening to this show to think about what it would mean for you to get people together and to organize and to start creating that world, that better world that we're currently being robbed of. And it is torture, and we are getting closer to death, to borrow what you were saying, Andy. But I definitely believe in victory, or la victoria, as we say in Spanish.
I don't think that's a great. I think that's a great way to end the episode.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for pushing me. See, you say people don't get inspired, but you are pushing me. You're like, why doesn't it get done Monday? And I'm like, you're right. It's just going to get done Monday. So people do get inspired. Okay. Like, let's not come on now.
You've done, it's just, yeah. It is in a dialogue with each other because we've been doing work, and it would only happen if we had been part of it. The reason this is happening is because you and I have now had some conversations through What's Left that have, and we've had some conversations in the car kind of coming back. And then I just know I have a particular framework now that, and that's the thing that came into my mind. So I wanted to, ask that. So, but I know what you're saying.
Right. So let's conclude. My plant, my house plant, fell over for some reason. All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast / challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes where you found this episode, or on our blog at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you fancy anything you have heard here, please subscribe, rate the future, and on notifications to any of our platforms on the Spotify, iTunes, podcast, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. You can find our blog and any of those links in the episode notes where we found this episode. If you would like to give us feedback about something you heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-hosts Andy Lipson and Alex. Thank you all for listening, and I expect we'll have me here for some time, and I'm back for a bit.
It's great.
All right, ciao.